Let's push that back.
Okay, some of my favorite memories of Mama are just knowing that we always had a whole bunch of people come to the house. I remember when we lived in Smackover, Mama would fix really big, good meals, but I wanted Raisin Bran, and it had to be Skinner Raisin Bran. And Nancy just said that Clarice, she had to have Skinner Raisin Bran, can't find it anymore. Another thing is, I know that when Tex would start to go to the store or something, she'd come by the house and she would let Jack go out and play for a minute. Well, Jack always ended up in a mud puddle, so he couldn't go to the store. We'd have to keep him, and I always wondered if Tex did that on purpose so she wouldn't have to take Jack to the store with her. But a real fond memory, and I'm not sure this is in chronological order, but Mama would have visitors come down and visit us there in Spring Hill, and when they started to leave, we couldn't just hug them by and tell them bye at the door. We had to walk out to the car with them, and then we'd stand there, with them in the car, and if it was cold, Mama would pull me up to her and wrap her arms around me. And of course, she was a little bit big, so she kept me warm. Or either she'd wrap her apron around me so that she could keep me warm. I remember...
Do you know what house that was at?
This was at the 811 Baker Street in Spring Hill, Louisiana. Yeah, that's where Daddy and Mama and Peggy and I moved. And Johnny was there with us some, but not too terribly much. But the things I remember about her, she and Miss Rogers, Pat's mother, were the best of friends. And they loved, both of them were very craft-minded. And they would take a plaster of Paris and make a little island, a little tropical island, and then they'd make pipe filters and different things to make the little monkey trees, and they'd have monkeys hanging from little branches and stuff like that. Another thing they did, they took hose, old pantyhose, and dyed them, and they would make corsages, and I still have one of those. Now I would love to have one of those trees, but I don't know whatever happened to all those. I don't know if they're any in existence anymore. But they'd make those little corsages out of the colored hose, and so they were very, very crafty together. She always loved for everybody to come. I know when we lived in Stevens, all the children and grandchildren would come, and we only had a two-bedroom, I think it was two-bedroom house there in Smart Oilfield in Stevens. And Mama would have all the kids come for Christmas, and I'm sure everybody brought something. But the house was small enough that everybody couldn't get inside. So most of the men would stand around outside, and a bunch of them smoked, so they'd have their big coats on standing outside, talking and smoking, while Mama and the girls were in there preparing the meal or getting it set out or whatever. And I know one time, I was, I guess 10 and 11 when we lived in Stevens, and of course had nieces and nephews that were a lot younger. And so we'd get somebody to get them in a room, and we'd go outside and scare them, go boo through the window or something. Well, can you imagine umpteen jillion kids in a house, a small house, making all that noise? So Ralph, Clarice's husband, decided he'd just pull a trick on us. So he slipped outside, and you know how you can almost feel somebody slipping up on you? And he was slipping up on us, and we didn't know who it was. We got to the back door of the house and just barely made it in before he grabbed us or something, scared the pee-wandering pee out of us. But anyway, let me think. I can't think of anything right offhand. So I know when Mama passed away, and I was 12 and a half. She died March the 25th of 1954. She was one of the finest, if not the finest Christian woman that I had ever known and have ever known. But even though, and I'll back up a little bit, even though Mama had all those kids and different ones, she was always one of the first to take food if somebody had a death in the family or was sick. She always was one of the first ones to do that. But I can remember, and I still have the little cards, all the little cards from the flowers that were sent to Mama's funeral. there were 600 sprays of flowers.
Wow.
It's the stack of cards.
My God.
Well, I guess that and remembrances or something. But I know at Joy City Baptist Church there in Smackover, flowers were banked all the way across the front of the church and then halfway down the aisles on the side.
When Mom's talked about going to church, is that where
Yeah.
Brenda
Now,
Long and
I think that, of course, Peggy being 6 years older, she may remember going to Luann, because I believe Luann Baptist Church was where Vera was married. But then we when we were in Smackover, we went to the Joy City Baptist Church, but it was when it was right out way down toward Northlet. You'd go one way to go to Northlet, and the other way you'd go to the left, I think, to go to where Paul and Tex lived in the oil field. And that's where we went to church. And then years later, and I don't know, I guess it was while we were still there, or maybe not. They moved it to the current location right there across from where Leon and George live and where Carolyn lives now. But the night that I was saved, and I always wondered why Mama wasn't there. We were in a revival. And the night that I was saved, and Carolyn Smelser, well, Carolyn Lutz was saved the same night. We were in revival, and it was at the old location down, down where we were there, down toward the oil field. Homer Jackson and Johnny Jackson were a brother team. Homer was not but 12 or 13. He was leading singing, and Johnny was the pastor, the preacher, the evangelist. And Carolyn and I were saved. Well, I wondered why Mama was not there. But I was saved the 19th of August in 1949. And Danny was born the next day.
Yes, he was.
Danny Smith was born on the 20th of August, and Mama was staying behind. There weren't cell phones and things then. Mama was staying behind because Clarice, I guess, had gone into labor so that she could hear, when Danny was born. I'm surprised she didn't fly out there or whatever she had to do. As I was saying earlier, the night that I was saved, Mama was not at church with us. And it was because she was at home waiting for Clarice to call or Ralph to call about Danny being born. And I was saved on August the 19th, 1949, and Danny was born on the 20th. Isn't that right?
Yeah, but I went in on the 19th, and he was born early, the 20th,
Yeah.
on Saturday morning of the 20th,
At what time, Clarice?
6:26
In the morning.
Yeah.
So Mama didn't go to church. We were in revival, and I'm sure any other time she would have been there.
And y'all rode the church bus, didn't you?
Well, no, I rode with Paul, or I think it was Paul and Tex, and he had that little car that had the rumble seat. And Elaine, you probably don't even know what I'm talking about, but a rumble seat, it was a seat, and it was like in the trunk or of the trunk, and you raised it up, and you sat outside. You weren't under a cover, were you, Clarice? And
It was like just raising up. But
I've heard the name and I've seen cars with
Yeah,
that, but I didn't know that's what they were
instead
called.
of raising up that way, it raised up from the top
Yeah.
and it had a seat.
So anyway, I was saved. Carolyn and I went down the same night, and it's like I've told a lot of people, I might not always lived exactly like I should, but I've never once doubted that I was saved. So anyway, I'm sure that Mama was tickled when we got home, and I realized, that I had been saved that night. And I was such a little evangelist, and I told somebody it's a shame I still am not that way.
You said what?
I was such an evangelist. I went home, and the Robinsons had 5 girls that lived across the street. Frances Ann lived there with Aunt Odell, and I went home, and boy, I witnessed to all of them, telling them, how I'd been saved. And I think maybe before that revival was out. Do you know what day of the week Danny was born, Clarice?
It was on Saturday morning, so it was on a Friday night. Y'all were
This-
having a revival.
This would have been Friday night, but it seemed like just within the next little bit, some of those Robinson girls made a profession of faith. So anyway, that was kind of my story about that. But tell something, Clarice. What's some of your earliest memories of Mama?
Well, we lived out at Lone Oak, where we were born, but we were in a different house from the one we were born in. but it's still out in the country from Smackover. And I remember waiting Leon was more so Leon in the kitchen with Mama and them cooking and doing things. And Daddy would bathe us out that outdoor bathhouse thing, and he would bathe us, and we'd go run at night, and we'd go running in the house, and Mama would dry us off and dress us in our pajamas.
Now, what did a bathhouse consist of? What did a bathhouse consist of? Tell me what a bathhouse is.
It was just part of the garage or something like that, and he'd fixed it with a shower, and you had to light the heater and then turn it off. It wasn't a fancy thing, and he'd just line up all us kids out there. I guess he would dry us off, and we'd go running in there. Mama would put us in our pajamas, in our little flour sack pajamas that she'd made us with. I remember that, and I remember when I was 4 years old that Mom and Daddy got the piano, and I dropped my dolly in the dirt, and Mom and Daddy was so proud. And, I say Reese hadn't been born yet, Peggy hadn't been born yet, I was just 4, because I'm 6 years older than Peggy. But Mom was always real kind and easygoing. I don't remember her ever raising her voice or.
Did your mother teach you how to play that on the piano?
No.
Or Granddaddy Long?
They're best friends, Mr. and Miss Gray, and they had a daughter, Helen, that was Vera's age, and a boy, Herbert, that was more Paul's age. And we'd go over and visit them so much. And Daddy and Mr. Gray played dominoes and cards, and they had a piano, and I had learned on that one.
Okay.
So, but she was just so kind and patient. Everybody liked her, and
So that piano, is that the one that
Reese's
Granddaddy
got-
Long would say, okay, you better gather around the piano?
Right now.
That is the one. That's the one that Daddy would say, "Okay, Vera, gather around the piano
Yeah.
and let's all sing."
Yeah.
And
How did Aunt Vera learn how to play? From the same
It's
friends?
some kind of correspondence
Okay.
course, and we all learned. Daddy, as we got older, Daddy taught us how to just kind of the chord and everything. But Mama never did play the piano. But of course, Daddy could play anything with strings. But we moved to Smackover. We moved to Luann when I was 7. I was just barely 7, and had started the school out at Standard Amstead, and Clarence and I was, and Mama was, and they were involved in all kind of church work. And Mama was always in, whenever their church doors was open, we were there. Mama made sure, and she didn't just send us; she took us, and we could always invite our friends home for Sunday dinner, because she always cooked so much. She made the best hot rolls,
Oh, yeah.
and they'd rise up, and she'd just use the regular cake pan, friend cake pan, so they'd rise up and hang over the side. And around so good, they were so good. And we didn't have a refrigerator back then, or electric one. We
Really?
had an old icebox where you put the sign up in the window, and the iceman would come around. If you needed 10 pounds, you'd put the 10, you'd bring it in there. But one day, a salesman came and
Yeah, that too.
was selling refrigerators, gasoline power. We didn't have electricity till I was 14, or 13, 14. And Daddy bought the refrigerator. The guy that Daddy told him said, "If you sell me a refrigerator, you'll have to stay here all day, because I can't afford one." But he did stay there most of the day, but he bought the refrigerator. We thought he had died and gone to heaven. I never did understand how the heat could make something cold, but he hooked it up to the house gas, the natural gas, and we loved. Mama would make a big old chocolate cake with Reese does it all the time. I hadn't made one in years, but she'd make a big old chocolate cake on Saturday, and we didn't just sit down and eat it. It was for Sunday dinner. Then she'd make that big old defrost tray, big glass defrost tray full of Jello and put strawberry Jello and put bananas in it. And, oh, that was the best stuff. And her Mama was an excellent cook, and she could stretch the money out. And she was a good manager, taking people would.
Do you need something to drink? Not much in
People-
there.
It's in a, people would, just a few of Mama's friends would bring her boxes of their kids' clothes, and Mama would rip them up and make us something completely different out of it. And she was always making sure we were dressed good. And Mama herself had a lot of pride in how she looked. She never did go around looking sloppy. She always had the right undergarments on, and her hair was fixed. And her and Daddy both took a lot of pride in the way that they looked.
That's why Clarice and I won't go anywhere without our lipstick on.
And that's why you put lipstick on before you go to bed?
That's right. Oh, I do that? No. I want to tell one thing so we make sure we get it on here, because
Okay.
this involves your mama, Peggy. Mama was a fine, and like I said, the finest Christian woman I believe I've ever known or probably will ever know. But to her, and this is being silly, there were two unpardonable sins. If somebody didn't accept Jesus as Savior, they were bound for hell. And if a woman smoked, they were bound for hell, and there was no turnaround. That old-fashioned mom. Well, Peggy and some of the Robinson girls that lived across the street, I said something about them, and Carolyn and Donnie, Leona's daughters, were at the house one night, one of the many times all of us had gotten together for something. And somebody snitched a package of cigarettes out of the store, and I always thought it was Daddy's store, but Peggy told that it was Mama and Jay's
It was.
venture.
Because Daddy was working in the office.
Yeah. But anyway, this little store that was across the road, somebody snitched a pack of cigarettes, and it wasn't me. I guess I probably wasn't. I guess I was 8 and Peggy was 14. And we went out.
So who was some of the other kids older than Mom, or was she the oldest
No,
of the group?
she was probably the oldest of the group,
Okay.
because Carolyn is a year older than I am, Donnie's 3 years younger. So anyway, we went out behind the house and we smoked cigarettes. And Donnie got sick, started choking on him, and she went back to the house and of course told on us. Well, Donnie was sick and went back to the house, and of course if I'm 8, Donnie's not but 5 or 6 at the most, smoking cigarettes now. So anyway, Leona couldn't spank Donnie, Carolyn, because Donnie was sick. The Robinson girls, both their parents smoked, so they didn't get a spanking. As I remember it, Peggy and I were the only ones that got a spanking. Mama took a limb and made a toothpick out of it on our rears. And I can still remember to this day, Peggy and I were sitting on the steps and we were going, you'd been crying so much that you were just like that. So I told people that I tried the vice of smoking, and Mama whooped the heck out of me, and I didn't like that. We moved to Stevens, and Girlie Smart chewed tobacco, and I tried that one time, and I didn't like it, so I just couldn't find any vices, so that's why I'm the perfect person that I am today. Now we'll hear her laugh. So go on, Clarice, with it. I want to
Well,
get that.
Mama was involved with the WNU and anything that went on at the church. And she was a good neighbor. Somebody was sick, she'd be taking food over there to them or something like that. And then every time one of the girls had a baby, that was Leona and Weta having the babies before she did, but they usually kept them in bed for about a week. They didn't get them up early like they do now, but Mama didn't go and stay with them because she had too many at home to take care of, but she'd look after them. And
Do you remember how Granny Long and Granddad Long met?
how
Did
they
you ever
met,
hear the story how they
Mama and
got
Daddy-
together?
They they grew up in the same area. He said he should have married Mabel first, but
He
she'd
said
already
that she was a
married.
beautiful flower, wasn't
He
Didn't
said
Daddy?
she was like a beautiful flower, but she'd and all I know to call her first husband is Will, and so she'd already married Will, and she was 20 and he was 43 or something, a lot older. But they said he acted so young, and so Daddy probably thought he didn't have a chance, and he married Jewel and had the 3 kids. But how did I get? Oh, so they'd known each other. He worked for people, you know, not sharecropper, but for his room and board. And I guess he got paid a little bit, but
I guess you would almost consider it sharecropping. And Daddy told me that the man that he worked for as a young man was very chinchy, and he'd barely let his wife cook enough for the family, much less him. And he told me, he said, I went to bed many a night with my old belly growling because I was so hungry.
well, you know how a young man eats at that age and everything. So, but
Well, didn't Mama
So about
have a
how old would he have
store?
been then?
huh?
About how old would he have been then?
Well, let me break
Okay.
in right here. Daddy went through the 8th grade of school. Now, Daddy was born in 1895. To me, that would be like having at least a college education now, if not a master's or something. And I always wondered why he just went through the 8th grade. But when Daddy was 14, his daddy died.
So he would have been in just
Yeah,
about the 8th
he would
grade.
have been about the 8th grade, and he had to quit work and go. So he could have been, you know, in his later teens even. Don't you
Oh,
think,
but
Clarence?
he was smart, but you're wanting to know about Mama, but they just known each other. I guess grew up in the same area. And Daddy played music for the dances they had, you know. It wasn't dance hall, and I guess they'd had a town square somewhere, and he'd play the fiddle or the guitar or something. Maybe he sung something for people to dance, and so they might have met that way or something. But now Daddy and Mama's first husband, Will Oliver, Daddy's mother was an Oliver. So Daddy and Will were like second cousins or something. So he said Jay and Leona and Wita wasn't just his stepchildren. They were
His
second
third
cousins or
cousin,
third
your
cousins. But, and Mama treated them just as nice, but she just treated everybody good. And no matter how many kids she had, she made our birthday special. We had a cake, and she'd have some little presents. There wasn't much. People didn't go all out like they do today. Nobody had the money, but she'd make sure we had a special day. And at Christmas time, they had she wrote Luann News for the Smackover newspaper, and made like $3 a week. Well, that'd be like $30 or $40 now, but she'd put something on layaway, something for some of us on layaway, and pay it out that little bit of the week, and then come up with something nice for us for our birthday, Christmas. So she made special occasions really special for us. She
And I want to break in there and tell, when we lived in Smackover, across from the road from the store, I guess I was 6 or 7, and Mama would, of course, they didn't have a lot of closet space, and she had a lot of people to buy for, so she would order stuff, and she had a big box sitting out on the front porch.
screened in front.
Yeah, screened in front porch. But she told us that Santa Claus was not going to have enough room in his sleigh to bring everything, and he'd had to send some stuff ahead of time to put out on Christmas night. But if we dared touch that box, that he would take it back. When I'd go out that door, and I guess maybe, well, of course, Clarice was old enough then that she might have been married or didn't believe in Santa Claus. But when I'd go out that door, I would just slip and slide just as easy as I could around that box, because I didn't want to dare even stumble. But that was kind of a neat thing, you know. Mama Mama, being the fine Christian woman she was, she still believed in letting the kids have their fantasies too. And of course, Christmas, Santa Claus was one of them.
Now, Granny Long, her mother died when she was young. Did she die in childbirth or?
No,
Mama's mother, Rose, died when she was about 2 or 2.5.
she was a year and a half old, Clarice.
Huh?
She was a year and a half old. Mama was born on January the 7th of 1897. And Rosa Maud died in childbirth, not that September, but the next September. So Mama was really just about 18 or 19 months old.
She doesn't, and
But she called Molly, Grandpa Auger's second wife, Mama.
that's the only Mama she
Yeah.
knew. So, and then she died.
In 1920. So she, she didn't live a real
never-
long time.
I never met her, I don't think. 1920.
1920. There's a good reason why you didn't
Because I
meet
wasn't
her.
born yet. I wasn't born until 29.
Now, this is something, and Clarice, I want you to help me remember this. Grandpa Auger, being a man and a widower, he was not able to keep Mama. And I don't know what the laws were of that time or whatever. He was not able to just keep Mama at the house with him. And she had to go to something like a foster home for a while.
I never knew.
You didn't know that? It might have been until he remarried in 1900. And,
So Mama would have been 3.
yeah, but a tale that involves Clarice and Mama. Clarice would come home, and of course, there was always confusion everywhere, because there was so much people in and out of the house.
Years later after I
After
married,
she got married, she would come home to Smackover, there where we lived across the store, I think. And she would have to, Mama would make me go sleep with Peggy. I always slept with Mama. She'd make me go sleep with Peggy so that Clarice could sleep with her, because when they got in bed at night, they could talk without all the noise and all going on.
so
And I would say, Mama, I really love Clarice, and I did. But I don't want her to spend the night. I just want her to come and go home when it gets bedtime.
just didn't want.
So I didn't want to share my bed partner with Clarice.
She was just so kind and sweet. Everybody loved her.
So you don't know, you never heard the tale about how Granddaddy Long might have proposed or anything like that?
Do what?
How Granddaddy Long might have proposed or won her over?
Well, after Will died, they had all came to South Arkansas to oil fields. That made a whole bunch of money, made a whole lot more money than working in the fields and getting paid, maybe. And then Will died. Daddy and Uncle Jack, his brother, was down there in the boom days of oil wells. And after Will died, Mama took over some of her insurance money and bought a little store. And Daddy would go into, of course he knew her back from earlier than he knew Will. He'd go into El Dorado and get ice for her to keep her meats and stuff cold. And so they just got to going around, and they just fell in love. He told me one time, like I said, he said I should have married Mabel before Will did. She was like a beautiful flower, and then she told, we don't say it in front of Wade Fay and them, but she told Vera one time that she was so much more in love with Daddy than she was with Will. He was so much older. Maybe Grandpa and Molly had a yard full of kids by then, and maybe she just, I don't know why she married a man so much older, but they said that Will was young looking and young acting and everything, and I think he had a good job. Lori uses that. We eat in here a lot in front of the TV, but that's how they met and married, and they decided that since Daddy had the 3 kids by Joel, and Mama had the 3 kids by Will, that they wouldn't have any together. They just kind of
Oh,
concentrated.
wow.
So I'm glad they did, they decided that. Then they had 8 more, but then Jewel remarried a Smith guy. And she had 8 more too, I believe is what they said. So,
7 or 8.
So what was her maiden name? Jewel
Con-
Cochran.
Cochran.
Jewel Cochran.
Okay.
One of the things that Daddy told about Mama, and I love to dance, you know, and of course we were Baptist, and long time ago they didn't have dances, and I know the first time I ever went to a dance, I was 13, I went to a little Teen Town dance that they had at the gym, the little sock hop. But I didn't tell Daddy I was going to the dance, but we were very close, and I didn't like to keep stuff from him. But you know what he told me? He said, your mama and I danced many a mile together. Did you ever know that, Clarice?
yeah,
He said that but it wasn't at honky tonks or somewhere like that. He said they would go to a person's house, and he said they'd push all the furniture back, and they'd dance. And Daddy, every once in a while, when music would be playing, he'd say, dance with me, Reese, and he'd do a little jerky 2-step here, there, and yonder.
well,
That was
he
always
used to come in
special.
from work, and we'd be playing the piano, they would be playing the piano, we'd all be over there, and he'd grab Mama and kind of dance around, and
Aw.
we'd just laugh, we thought it was so funny that
Yeah.
Mama and Daddy was dancing.
Well, Aunt Clarice, were you there when my mom was born? You remember anything about?
Peggy,
Was she born at home? Because I know in her video she said that she was born at Lone Oak. Now, I was born at Kennedy Clinic there on Main Street, or was it Broadway there in Smackover? But what about Claire?
I was
Peggy?
7 when we moved to Luann, and Peggy is 6 years younger than me, so I think she must have that. I think she was just really little when we moved to Luann. I just remember a little something of that she like they were talking about a name for her, for Peggy, baby Peggy, and Mama said, well, I love the name of Peggy, but I'm afraid y'all will call her Peg Leg, and I don't know what made her think that, but we told her we wouldn't, but I guess nobody ever,
Yeah.
I never remember hearing it. But that's all I remember. And she was so pretty with her curly hair, and you've seen the pictures of her sitting on the piano stool with her. I think she won some kind of prize or something.
She won a beauty contest.
Yeah.
But we teased her because she was flipping her dress up and down.
Your earring was stuck back there. I thought a bug had gotten on.
Well, I know I was asking a lot about Granny Long, but what about Granddad Long?
Granddaddy who?
Granddad Long, what
Our dad.
what were his parents like?
I've got the family history in there, but you probably got it too, don't you? Goes back to the 17th century.
Was he the oldest in his family?
No.
What's it, why?
Aunt Odell was the oldest, wasn't she? Well, now what about Robert? Was
Uncle
Robert,
Robert was the oldest,
and then Aunt Odell, and then Daddy, and then Uncle Jack. Yeah.
but Granddaddy Long died when our daddy was 14, and then she married Mr. Crowder, who had 4 or 5 sons. Grandma did, and we knew her as Grandma Crowder. She was grandmother Long too, and she I didn't like her very much, and I know Clarence didn't either, but she was real whiny. She was, well, Aunt Fawn, Uncle Jack, was Grandma's daughter-in-law. She said Grandma would want something, and if she didn't get it, she'd just take to bed and be sick for about a week till she got her way, and then she,
So Jack,
Uncle Jack is Daddy's younger brother.
right, and he's the one that married Aunt Fawn?
Uh-huh.
Is that- Okay.
Yeah.
you remember
I'm
Aunt
just,
Fawn?
I do. I'm trying to make all the connections. Who was it that got their eye put out at the sawmill or whatever?
That was Grandpa Auger, Mama's daddy.
Okay.
But I think that I'm not sure how that happened.
Hey, something like that happened. One eye, and it seemed like they said he got an infection in the other eye.
Yeah.
But
I
that
thought
was
it was the
Mom.
wood hit something wrong and came, but I,
Well,
I
he-
could be imagining.
Somebody told me that he always wore safety glasses, but there was something he had to go back and do pretty quick, and so he didn't bother to put them on, and that's when that, I guess that little chip of wood or whatever got
But
in
you
his
know,
eye.
he'd ride the bus from Missouri down to Luann by himself. Or
Now,
just
who is this?
Grandpa,
Grandpa Longer,
Okay.
that's being blind. He'd have his dark glasses and his white cane, have his money. He had long, slender fingers. He was smart. And he would have his money arranged just so he knew how many, everything. So he'd get down there and back fine.
well, going back to Daddy, like I said, had told me that, you know, he quit school when he was 14, and then had to go to work, and but he was a very smart guy, like Claire said, and just was very innovative with everything.
I think children that grew up during that time learned a lot of the basics that we don't know.
Yeah.
Like my dad with gardening and
Yeah.
with working with
Picking
engines
cotton.
and
Yeah.
stuff. You just learn a lot of traits that come in handy. And
Well, you know, used to when we'd bring our history books home, and we'd have to be studying for history when we lived in Luann, Daddy would get our history books and just loved reading them. It's like reading a novel that was history that some of it he barely remembered. Like he would talk about Custer dying, and Daddy was just born in the 90s, and this happened in, when did,
1877.
huh?
1876 or
So it
77.
wasn't that far. And Daddy would tell us, you know, they said a man rode his horse to death trying to warn Custer, but he wouldn't listen to him. And I suppose he knew about it. They didn't have TVs, and the paper just came out maybe once a week. I don't know if it came out every day or not, but he would just grab our books and just eagerly read about it. We'd be getting ready to do it when Daddy was reading our books. So.
And they'd say, Daddy, we've got to study, from what I've heard them tell. Oh, okay, just a minute, I'm almost through with this. He loved the news. And of course, Daddy and I ended up being at home by ourselves for several years. And if I'd try to talk to him during the news, he'd go, listen. He wanted to hear that news. But he was very special. A very funny tale about Daddy. When I was a senior and was a cheerleader, he went to all the football games. And of course, the farthest that we went was an hour away over to the Shreveport area, there from Spring Hill. And one time he was taking a couple of neighborhood boys, Charles McDowell and Wallace McCartney, that lived right there in the neighborhood. Well, they rode in the back of the truck. Now, they wouldn't let them do that this day and time to Haynesville, which was just about 20 or 22 miles away. Well, they didn't know where the stadium was. So when they got there, there was a policeman standing on the street corner. Daddy stopped and asked him, and the policeman specifically said, you go down here, sir, you make a block, and you come right back by here, and he told him where the stadium was. Well, when they pulled out, Charles McDowell leaned up and said, Mr. Long, make a U-turn. They said, He said, oh, it's okay, Mr. Long, make a U-turn. Daddy made a U-turn. When he came back by, the policeman stopped him, and he said, you just made an illegal U-turn. Said, I specifically told you to make the block. Daddy said, well, those boys told me I could just make a U-turn. The policeman said, if you're going to let the boys drive, hand the steering wheel back there to them. It made Daddy somewhat mad. And they started off, and Charles leaned up to say something. Daddy said, Charles, if you don't want to have to walk back to Spring Hill, you better sit down and hush. But Daddy was well loved in Spring Hill. When he would come in from work, and he always had to have a truck because he worked in the oil fields, I'd say, Daddy, can I have the keys to the truck and go run around or whatever? Well, part of our running around was driving up and down Main Street of Spring Hill. We'd go and turn around and come back, and we waved at the same people. Well, a lot of people knew the truck. And Daddy would tell me, he would go downtown, he'd say, Reese, I'm a really popular guy. All those kids are waving at me. Well, but he was a real popular guy. I didn't like having to ride the bus, so Daddy would come pick me up at school. And this was when I was in high school. And he'd take 2 or 3 or maybe 4 of my friends with me. and he'd always take us by the Doffel House or the Dairy Queen and buy us all a Coke. But and of course the girls called him Papa Long, and the boys called him Colonel for whatever reason.
Colonel?
Colonel. I guess, is that a Army term or something? But anyway, Thursday nights in Spring Hill was dollar night at the drive-in. Well, Daddy had that truck, and he'd put some slats across the back of it. And we would drive all over town, because everybody knew we were going to go to the drive-in. And Daddy would pick up everybody. They knew when we were going to be coming.
It's just the vehicles was charged for.
Just the vehicle you got in
One
for
ticket.
$1. So Daddy would pay for the car to go in. Now, a lot of people would put their trunks up and hide people all in under there. But Daddy would pay the $1 for us to go into the drive-in. And so he was really a very popular man there.
He enjoyed that.
Yeah. He just had a good time. What?
I say you went to, of course you went to Dr. Kennedy's and had you, I think,
Yeah.
didn't she say?
Well, I know that Johnny has talked about that when Mom and Daddy left to go are you recording? Okay. When Daddy and left to take Mama to the doctor for me to be born, we went to the Kennedy Clinic. Johnny said, Huey, I don't know what it's going to be when they come back, whether it's going to be a boy or a girl, but Mom and Daddy are going to have a baby with them. Johnny was 11 and Huey was 9. And of course, at that time, you know, they didn't talk about women having babies and all. So what do you remember about when I was born? It was just a bright star in the sky.
I remember Mama being pregnant, wearing the maternity thing,
Yeah.
2-piece. Back then you tried to hide your big stone. Now they wear those tight T-shirts so you can see every.
The belly button sticking out, yeah.
But she didn't do anything different. I mean, she didn't stay in the bed
Yeah.
a week like everybody else did.
I know, I can just imagine, and I don't know, Clarice, I'm sure you were there when I gave my testimony on Mother's Day at church, when we were having to meet up in the great room because of Rita. And I told about how Mama already was 44, had 10 children, and the youngest one 6 when I was born. And I said I was not part of Planned Parenthood, I'm sure. But Mama was the kind that she didn't have to split her love between kids. She just grew more and more love. But can you imagine with Weta, her oldest child, being pregnant with Weta Faye, and her being pregnant with me? Weta Faye's 3 weeks older than I am. Can you just imagine her kind of, but I think she probably just took it in stride that she was pregnant again.
I don't remember her. I don't remember Mama ever being sick. I don't remember her ever going to bed being sick or anything.
But how many children did she lose?
She had 5 miscarriages. It says it on my birth certificate. And I don't know how I remember this, maybe, because, you know, Daddy and I had a lot of quality time together. Because after Mama died and Peggy left home, it was just the 2 of us together from the time, I guess, for probably 4 years or so. And a lot of times on Sunday night, we would be, I'd be rolling my hair to get prepared for school the next morning. Daddy'd get his guitar out, and while I rolled my hair, we'd be playing and singing. And one of the favorite songs was that Silver-Haired Daddy of mine, or, you know, just different ones. He loved You Are My Sunshine. But anyway, what did you ask that I'm supposed to be telling? You're too young for that.
I don't remember.
Having time to visit.
Well, we had a lot of time to talk, and
You were.
oh, okay, I know where I was. Thank you, Jesus, for letting my brain come back. I guess probably in the process, he told me that at least one of those miscarriages were twins.
Oh, I never knew
You never
that.
did hear that? At least one set, because on my birth certificate it had Mama had 10 living children and had 5 miscarriages.
Hmm.
But I've thought about it all the time. If Mama had carried some of those to term, then some of the rest of us probably would not be there. Because if you think about it, now just starting with Vera, Vera's birthday was November of 24. Paul's was May of 26. Yours and Clarence's was March of 29. Well, see, during that time, that's almost 3 years. There could have been a miscarriage there. Okay, Paul, and then, I mean, you, and then there's just 17 months difference. There's just 17
Who is
months
it?
difference.
Who's out there?
Oh, it might be Vernice. I was supposed to go get the mail.
Who is Nancy?
No, it's one of your Aetna things.
Aetna, from the insurance. So anyway, Johnny is just 17 months younger than you and Clarence. And so there wouldn't have been probably a miscarriage there. But then there's a couple of years difference between Johnny and Huey, from August to December. And then there's 3 from Peggy, Huey to Peggy, so there could have been one there. And I don't know if there would have been one, between Peggy and me, but 5 miscarriages.
Wow. Hey, Clarice, who was born first? You or
I was.
you were?
Mama, they didn't know it was gonna be 2.
Okay.
Mom and Daddy didn't, and it was, I guess she'd been in labor all night because Daddy, had got nobody had phones, and he gone to the neighbors to call the doctor, who had to come out from Smacko, or El Dorado, I mean, and Mama knew that Mama was still in the bed. She was trying to get Weta, when Weta was 11 years older than me, I
Yeah.
believe. And she was trying to get Weta to take those younger kids over. Aunt Fawn lived right there close, and take them over there, the ones that had to go to school to get them ready. And Weta knew that it wasn't like Mama staying in the bed, that Mama was hurting, and she didn't want to leave her, but finally Mama convinced her that she would help her more if she'd go get the kids over there. But I was born, now if you can imagine this, I was born before Weta got the kids out, and I made a sound.
And before the doctor got there?
Oh yeah, before Daddy hadn't even got back from calling the doctor. So I made some kind of sound, and Weta heard it, and Mama told her, said, "Oh, it's just that little kitten under the bed there," and so she finally got Weta to go on, and she got me up there, in her arms or something. When Daddy came back in and, found out that I was born, it was just 15 minutes, so he didn't miss me. And she said, "Alan, I think there's another baby in there." And sure enough, it was. And then when Clarence was born, he was born feet first,
Mm.
and when all of them had already came out of the birth canal, except just to his head, her contractions stopped. And Daddy said, "Mabel, you're going to kill my boy." And so anyhow, he got him out of there.
But actually, what he told me, he literally took Clarence's feet and helped her have the baby. And so, yeah, so Daddy actually helped deliver Clarence.
I guess the doctor got there after a while and took care of anything that needed taken care of.
And Clarence, I told Clarence that within the last just very few years, and he did not know that. He didn't know that his daddy had helped deliver him. Because like you said, Daddy was saying, "Mabel, push," because he already, of course, could see that it was a little boy. And she was just so exhausted she couldn't. And so he helped deliver Clarence by taking hold of his feet.
And he was tickled to death. Daddy was, having twins. And I told people, I said, "Imagine Mama could have cut his throat with a rusty butcher knife, having 2 at a time," but he was tickled to death. They had twins. And I remember at church at Lone Oak, they had, the church was the school, and it also, the Baptists worshiped there on one Sunday, the Methodists and others, they kind of took turns. I think it's about the same congregation. And they had some kind of little play going on, and they had Mama dressed us, Clarence and I, and so we were under 7. We were probably like 3 or 4 or 5. She had, whoever was doing the play had us come out there in our little white flour sack pajamas, the one-piece pajamas, you know what she'd made, and bind the edges of them with bias tape, and we got up there and nailed on each of us nailed on a side of a little stool or a box or something with our hands up like that and sang, into my heart, come into my heart, Lord Jesus, something like that. I barely remember doing that, and everybody thought it was so cute. the
Wouldn't we
twins.
love to have pictures of that?
Yeah.
Man.
But I remember a lot out there at Lone Oak, even though I was 7 when we moved.